"I can't live without a man," the black girl told the rancher, her voice cutting through the saloon's cruel laughter as the mountain men and dusty cowboys dismissed her desperate plea. The trembling girl was nothing to them, a cleaning woman begging for scraps, destined to fade into the unforgiving frontier like countless others before her. The lone rancher, weathered and wealthy, sat unmoved in the corner, another man who would surely turn away from her pitiful request. But neither the mocking crowd nor the silent rancher knew what burned beneath her words, or how the mysterious land seizures plaguing their territory connected to secrets that could destroy them all. Would her desperate gamble save the community from the conspiracy closing in around them, or seal her fate as just another forgotten soul lost to the desert? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The morning sun cast long shadows across Copper Ridge as Sable Thompson crouched behind the Johnson homestead, her weathered hands sketching precise measurements onto a piece of torn paper. The family inside packed their belongings in silence, their faces hollow with defeat. 3 days earlier, Land Commissioner Harold Grimsby had arrived with official documents declaring their boundaries incorrect. The survey claimed their house sat on government land. The Johnsons had 48 hours to vacate. Sable knew the survey was wrong. She had walked these boundaries countless times during her cleaning rounds, memorizing every fence post and creek bend. Her rough sketches showed the true property lines. But who would believe a black woman who scrubbed floors for survival? The front door creaked open. Martha Johnson emerged, her arms full of children's clothes. She spotted Sable immediately. "What are you doing here?" Martha's voice carried exhaustion rather than anger. Sable folded her papers quickly. "I wanted to help." "Nobody can help us now." Martha's shoulders sagged. "The government says we built our home," sketched on scrap paper. "This shows the real property lines." One of the deputies snorted. "Look at those chicken scratches." "Ma'am, I suggest you return to whatever kitchen you escaped from." Vex's tone carried the weight of absolute authority. "Leave land matters to educated men." The papers trembled in Sable's hands. She had spent years perfecting her measurements, teaching herself mathematics from discarded school books. But to them, she was invisible. Less than invisible. That evening, Sable sat in her cramped shack on the outskirts of town, surrounded by her secret collection. Dozens of hand-drawn maps covered every surface, each one meticulously detailed. She had documented property boundaries across the entire territory, working by moonlight when the world slept. A pattern had emerged over recent months. Families were losing their land with increasing frequency. The seizures followed a strange route, all pointing toward Copper Ridge itself. Something connected these seemingly random evictions, but Sable couldn't grasp what. The next morning brought worse news. The Hendricks family received eviction papers, then the Moores. Each time, the official surveys claimed boundary errors that Sable knew were fabricated. She found herself walking toward the Silver Dollar Saloon, her stomach churning with desperation. Through the dusty windows, she could see the town's powerful men conducting their evening business. Ranchers, officials, merchants, all of them dismissing her very existence. At the corner table sat Elias Brannon, nursing a whiskey in solitude. The wealthiest rancher in the territory kept to himself since his father's death 2 years prior. His weathered hands and steady gaze suggested a man who had seen too much of the world's cruelties. Sable had cleaned his father's office once, years ago. She remembered walls covered with detailed survey maps and legal documents. The old man had spoken of protecting the land from those who would exploit it. His son might understand a horse or a broken fence. No mockery, but no understanding either. "Please," she whispered, leaning closer to his table. Families are losing everything. The surveys are wrong, all of them. He took another sip of whiskey. Not my concern. The rejection hit harder than the crowd's laughter. Sable straightened her shoulders and walked toward the door, their cruel voices following her into the night. Behind her, Elias continued drinking alone, but his eyes tracked her movement until she disappeared. Outside, the desert wind carried the scent of coming change. Tomorrow she would try again. Because Martha Johnson's tears demanded justice, and because somewhere in those fraudulent documents lay a conspiracy that threatened everyone in Copper Ridge, even men who thought themselves untouchable. Dawn broke over Copper Ridge as Sable approached the Brannan Ranch gates. Her leather satchel contained every map she had ever drawn, rolled tight and tied with string. The ranch hands loading hay wagons barely glanced her way. She had spent the sleepless night rehearsing her words. The humiliation from the saloon still burned, but desperation drove her forward. 3 more families had received eviction notices since yesterday. The main house sat like a fortress against the morning sky. Elias emerged from the stable, his shirt dusty from feeding horses. He stopped when he saw her walking up the dirt path. "You're on private property." Sable's hands shook as she untied her satchel. "You received a survey notice yesterday." His expression shifted slightly. She was right. The envelope had arrived with the morning mail, bearing the official territorial seal. How could you possibly know that? Instead of answering, she unrolled her first map. The Brannan Ranch sprawled across the paper in precise detail, every fence line and water source marked with mathematical accuracy. Elias stepped closer despite himself. "Where did you get this?" "I drew it." Her voice carried quiet pride. "Every measurement is exact." About people who wanted to steal what they had built. "How did you learn to do this?" The question opened a floodgate of memory. Sable had been 12 when the first surveyors came to Copper Ridge. She watched them work from behind trees and rocks, fascinated by their instruments and calculations. When they discarded broken equipment or torn papers, she salvaged everything. "I taught myself mathematics from school books people threw away." Her fingers traced the map edges. "I practiced measuring with sticks and string until I could judge distances by sight. Every night after cleaning work, I walked property lines and recorded what I saw." Years of secret study had built her expertise. She memorized trigonometry formulas while scrubbing floors. She calculated angles while washing dishes. Her mind stored every geographical detail of the territory. "But the surveyor's office refused to look at your work. They won't listen to someone like me." The words carried years of rejection. "But they might listen to someone like you." Elias unfolded the official survey notice he had received. Comparing it to Sable's map revealed glaring errors. The government claim extended far beyond legal boundaries, encompassing some of his best grazing land. "Why should I trust you?" She rolled out another map. This one showed the Johnson property with brutal accuracy. The real boundaries versus the fraudulent official survey. The difference was obvious, even to untrained eyes. "Because I'm right, and they're stealing your neighbor's land." The truth hit him like cold water. If the surveys were deliberately falsified, his ranch was next. The pattern Sable had documented showed a systematic theft of the territory's most valuable properties. "What do you want from me?" "Partnership." The word hung between them. "I provide the accurate surveys. You provide the legal standing to challenge the surveying equipment with practiced care. I know every boundary, every creek, every property marker in this territory. All of it stored up here. She tapped her temple. The implications staggered him. This woman possessed more geographical knowledge than the official territorial surveyors. Her expertise could expose the entire conspiracy of fraudulent land seizures. The government will never accept surveys from you. But they'll accept surveys from Elias Brannon. Her eyes met his directly. We work together, or we lose everything separately. Around them, the morning sun climbed higher over Copper Ridge. In the distance, another family loaded their possessions onto a wagon, victims of falsified boundaries. Time was running out for everyone. Elias extended his hand toward her. "Show me everything you know." The partnership began before sunrise. Sable arrived at the Brannon Ranch each morning carrying her surveying tools and rolled maps. Elias provided the legal documentation and official standing her work required. Their first victory came within the week. The Henderson family had received eviction papers claiming their barns sat on government land. Sable's precise measurements proved the structure stood well within their property boundaries. When Elias presented the corrected survey to Commissioner Grimsby, the eviction was quietly withdrawn. Word spread quickly through Copper Ridge. The reclusive rancher was fighting the land seizures. Families began approaching him with their own questionable survey notices. Mayor Vex arrived at the Brannon Ranch on a Tuesday morning, his polished boots clicking against the wooden porch. Elias met him at the door while Sable worked inside, invisible but listening. "Elias, my friend, I hear you've been questioning our territorial surveys." "I've been correcting errors." Vex's laugh carried no warmth. "These matters are complex. Perhaps you should leave them to qualified professionals." Through the window, Sable watched Elias's jaw tighten. He had grown protective of their work, defending her expertise even when she wasn't present in his memory. "Protect the land. Don't let them take what belongs here." The old man had known something was coming. Their investigation deepened over the following weeks. Sable's photographic memory for geographical details proved invaluable. She could recall the exact placement of fence posts from years ago, identifying when boundaries had been secretly moved. Her mathematical skills astounded Elias daily. Complex trigonometry calculations that should require hours of careful work, she completed in minutes. Surveying problems that puzzled trained professionals, she solved by pure mental calculation. "How do you hold all these numbers in your head?" "Practice." She rolled up another completed survey. "When you can't write things down safely, you learn to remember everything." The admission revealed years of hidden studying. Sable had developed her expertise in secret, knowing that discovery could bring punishment. Her mind had become a vast repository of geographical knowledge, accumulated through countless nights of covert work. Commissioner Grimsby attempted to discredit their surveys by demanding to see the person who had actually performed the measurements. Elias deflected these requests, claiming professional confidentiality, but the pressure was mounting. "They know someone else is doing the real work," Sable said during one of their morning planning sessions. "Eventually, they'll force you to reveal your source." The thought troubled Elias more than he expected. Their partnership had evolved beyond simple collaboration. He found himself looking forward to her arrival each morning, appreciating not just her expertise, but her quiet determination and sharp intelligence. "What if we made it official?" he asked suddenly. She looked up from her calculations. "Official how?" "Apply for your surveyor's license. Put your name on the work." The suggestion hit her like lightning. No woman had ever been licensed as a territorial surveyor. Certainly no black woman. The idea was so audacious it took her breath. Copper Ridge. She sketched everything from her hiding place, the equipment locations, the sample sites, the faces of the men directing the operation. Her trained eye caught details that casual observers would miss. When she reported her findings to Elias, the pieces began forming a larger picture. The land seizures weren't random theft. They were preparation for something bigger. "Mining rights," he said quietly. "Someone wants to strip mine the ridge." His father's final words suddenly made sense. The old man had discovered the conspiracy years ago. His warnings about protecting the land weren't just about preserving the ranch. They were about preventing the destruction of the entire territory. "We need proof," Sable said. "Real evidence that connects the seizures to the mining operation. And we need it before they realize how much we know." The stakes had escalated far beyond correcting survey errors. They were fighting to save Copper Ridge itself from industrial destruction. The battle would require every skill Sable had developed and all the courage Elias could muster. Time was running out faster than either of them realized. The mining equipment disappeared 3 days after Sable's discovery. The men packed their core samples and sophisticated machinery under cover of darkness, leaving only disturbed earth as evidence of their presence. Sable returned to the ridge at dawn, documenting everything with her surveyor's eye. Soil samples had been extracted in a precise grid pattern. The operation showed careful planning and significant financial backing. She sketched the sample locations onto her territory map. The pattern revealed systematic exploration of the entire ridge structure. Someone was evaluating the mineral wealth beneath Copper Ridge with scientific precision. Back at the Brannan Ranch, Elias spread his father's papers across the kitchen table. Hidden among legal documents and property deeds, he found references to geological surveys from 20 years earlier. His father had known about mineral deposits in the ridge. "Copper," Elias read from a faded report. "Significant ore concentrations throughout the ridge formation followed Sable's predicted pattern exactly, tightening the corridor toward Copper Ridge." Elias challenged each fraudulent survey publicly, presenting Sable's accurate measurements to territorial authorities. His social standing provided credibility their evidence needed, but the pressure was mounting. "People are asking who's really doing the surveying work," he told Sable during one of their evening planning sessions. "Grimsby keeps demanding to interview my surveyor directly." The moment they both knew was coming had arrived. Sable would have to step forward publicly or watch their efforts crumble. "I've been preparing for this." She pulled out a carefully written document. "My application for territorial surveyor licensing." The application represented years of accumulated expertise, translated into official language. Sable had documented her training, listed her completed surveys, and provided mathematical proof of her competency. "The Territorial Board has never licensed a woman." "Then I'll be the first." Her quiet confidence masked deep fear. Public exposure would bring scrutiny, hostility, and danger. But families were losing their homes while mining interests prepared to destroy everything. Elias read through her application with growing amazement. The scope of her self-education was extraordinary. Advanced mathematics, geological principles, legal procedures. She had mastered skills that defeated many formally trained men. "You're more qualified than half the licensed surveyors in the territory. Qualification isn't the issue." They both understood the real barriers she faced. Her gender and race would overshadow any demonstration of expertise. The Territorial Board would find reasons to reject her application, regardless of merit. Mayor Vex arrived unannounced the next morning, accompanied by 2 men in expensive Eastern clothing. They examined the Brannan property with calculating eyes, measuring distances and evaluating access routes. Sable watched from inside the house as Vex pointed toward Copper Ridge. The Eastern men nodded until sleeping in the guest room to maintain their around-the-clock surveillance. Her presence changed the household dynamic in subtle ways that surprised them both. Elias found himself looking forward to their breakfast conversations, appreciating her sharp intelligence and unexpected humor. She challenged his thinking and expanded his understanding of the territory they were fighting to protect. "Why did you choose to help me?" she asked one evening as they reviewed survey documents by lamplight. The question caught him off guard. His initial motivations had been purely selfish, protecting his own property interests. But working alongside her had revealed deeper purposes. "Because you were right, and they were wrong. Plenty of people are right without getting help." He considered her words carefully. "Because you earned it. Because justice matters more than convenience." The admission surprised him. His father had raised him to value fairness, but years of isolation had dulled those instincts. Sable's courage had reawakened principles he thought he had lost. Their partnership deepened into something approaching friendship. Mutual respect grew from shared purpose and complementary skills. She provided expertise and strategic thinking. He provided resources and social credibility. The combination was proving more powerful than either had expected. Their corrected surveys had saved a dozen families from fraudulent evictions. Their evidence was building toward a comprehensive exposure of the conspiracy. But time was running short. The mining interests were moving toward active operations, and the territorial authorities were growing suspicious of their continued challenges to official surveys. The final confrontation was approaching faster than either of them was prepared to face. The revelation came while Sable studied her father's death certificate in the Territorial Records Office. She had convinced the clerk she was researching property inheritance for Elias, gaining access to documents normally restricted to family members. Thomas Brannan's death certificate listed natural causes, heart failure in his sleep. But the date troubled her. Elias sank onto a wooden crate, absorbing the implications. His father's final weeks made terrible sense now. The old man had grown increasingly paranoid, checking property boundaries obsessively and muttering about people who wanted to steal their land. "He tried to warn me." His voice carried the weight of sudden understanding. "All those speeches about protecting what we built." He knew they would come for the ranch eventually. Sable showed him the timeline she had constructed. Thomas Brannan's complaint, his mysterious death, the immediate acceleration of land seizures. The sequence painted a clear picture of murder disguised as natural causes. "We're fighting the same people who killed him." The realization transformed their mission from property dispute to pursuit of justice for murder. Elias felt his father's presence more strongly than any time since the funeral. The old man's warnings had been desperate attempts to prepare his son for this battle. That night, they discovered someone had been watching the ranch. Fresh boot prints circled the house, and the barn doors showed signs of careful examination. Their investigation had attracted dangerous attention. Sable began sleeping with a loaded rifle beside her bed. Elias installed new locks and positioned mirrors to watch the approach roads. They were no longer just fighting fraudulent surveys. They were targets of people willing to commit murder. The core samples from Copper Ridge revealed the scope of what they faced. Sable's geological research confirmed massive copper deposits throughout the ridge formation. The mineral wealth was worth millions of dollars to whoever controlled the mining rights. Enough copper to supply half the country, she calculated. The railroad expansion, telegraph lines, electrical systems, they're sitting on a fortune. The Eastern Mining Syndicate had invested years and significant money into acquiring the land. Thomas Brannan's interference had delayed their plans, but not stopped them. Now his son and a brilliant black woman. "This is your surveyor. Miss Thompson has been conducting all surveying work under my supervision," Elias replied carefully. "Unlicensed surveying is illegal." Grimsby gestured toward the marshals. "Arrest them both." Sable stepped forward before anyone could move. I applied for territorial licensing 3 weeks ago. Until the board rules on my application, I'm operating under provisional status. The legal technicality stopped Grimsby cold. Territorial law allowed provisional surveying during license review periods. Her application, regardless of its ultimate fate, provided temporary protection. Your application will be rejected, Grimsby snarled. Women don't become surveyors. Then you'll have to wait for the board's official decision. The standoff stretched for several tense minutes. Grimsby lacked legal authority to arrest them immediately, but his fury promised future retaliation. The marshals eventually departed with threats of continued surveillance. After they left, Sable and Elias realized their time had run out. The application process would take weeks, but Grimsby would find ways to stop them long before the territorial board reached any decision. "We need to force a public confrontation," she said. "Present all our evidence at once, before they can silence us. The monthly town meeting is this Saturday." Perfect. She began organizing their most damning evidence. "We expose everything. The fraudulent surveys, the mining conspiracy, your father's murder. They'll try to stop us. Probably." Her expression hardened with determination. "But if we present the evidence publicly, they can't hide the truth anymore." The plan was dangerous and desperate. Standing before the entire town, accusing powerful officials of conspiracy and murder, would make them permanent targets. But families were still losing their homes, and Copper Ridge faced destruction. Justice for Thomas Brannan and protection for their community. Land management. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Several families leaned forward, hoping for vindication of their own losses. Sable moved to stand beside Elias, unrolling her master map across a nearby table. The detailed territory survey showed every property boundary, water source, and geographical feature in precise accuracy. "This map documents the true boundaries of every property in Copper Ridge territory," Elias began. "It reveals significant errors in recent official surveys." Grimsby interrupted immediately. "Those maps were prepared by an unlicensed individual. They have no legal validity. The accuracy speaks for itself." Elias gestured toward Sable's work. "Every measurement has been verified against original territorial documents." Sable stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly through the packed room. "My name is Sable Thompson. I have documented 8 years of surveying irregularities in this territory." The crowd's reaction split along predictable lines. Some residents nodded with recognition, remembering her quiet presence during their own property disputes. Others stared in shock that a black woman dared address them as equals. "I discovered that recent land seizures follow a specific pattern." She traced routes on her map with steady fingers. "Every fraudulent survey creates access toward Copper Ridge for industrial mining operations." Mayor Vex laughed dismissively. "Preposterous accusations from someone with no qualifications whatsoever." "My qualifications include 8 years of self-study in advanced mathematics, surveying techniques, and territorial law." Sable's voice gained strength. "I have personally measured every property boundary in this room." She pointed to Martha Johnson. "The official survey claimed your house sat on government land. My measurements prove it sits 47 feet inside your legal property line." Martha nodded vigorously. "She's right. The girl warned me the survey was wrong 3 days before they came with eviction papers." "The Hendricks family," Sable continued, pointing to another section of the clear land access for strip mining operations that would destroy our entire territory. Elias stepped forward with the final piece of evidence. "My father discovered this conspiracy 20 years ago. He filed formal complaints with territorial authorities. 3 days later, he died under mysterious circumstances. The crowd erupted in angry voices. Thomas Brannan had been respected throughout the territory. Accusations of his murder struck deep emotional chords. "You're suggesting we killed Thomas Brannan?" Mayor Vex's composure cracked slightly. "That's an outrageous lie. The timing suggests murder disguised as natural death." Sable displayed her timeline documentation. His complaint filing, his death, the immediate acceleration of land seizures. The pattern is clear. At that moment, the town hall doors opened. Territorial Marshal James Crawford entered with 2 deputies, their badges gleaming in the lamplight. The crowd fell silent. "Marshal Crawford," Mayor Vex called out with obvious relief. "Perfect timing. We have individuals making false accusations against territorial officials." The marshal walked directly to Sable, examining her surveying equipment and maps. His weathered face showed no emotion as he studied her precise documentation. "Miss Thompson, I believe you contacted our office 3 weeks ago?" "Yes, sir. I provided evidence of surveying fraud and requested federal investigation." Vex's face went pale. Grimsby began edging toward the rear exit. "Your evidence was quite thorough." Marshal Crawford addressed the crowd. "Federal investigation has confirmed systematic fraud in territorial land management. We have warrants for the arrest of Mayor Cornelius Vex and Land Commissioner Harold Grimsby." Chaos erupted as the deputies moved to arrest both officials. The Eastern mining representatives attempted to flee, but found their path blocked by angry residents. "All fraudulent land seizures will be reversed," the marshal announced. "Property ownership returns to original rightful holders immediately." Required courage, but dignity had made it sustainable.